Datas is not your average, ordinary, everyday Super Sentai combat robot. He is instead the communications and sensors assistant to the Goseiger. He actually stays back at their home base. Well, if you can call an astronomy lab a base. It's where they hang out when they're not fighting. And Datas basically hangs out there, disguised as a video arcade machine, which the absent-minded professor apparently knew nothing about when he threw a tarp over it some years ago. Datas has been sitting on Earth for quite some time, and he just so happens to end up in the one location where there's an absent-minded professor who covers it up without giving it a second thought. There's a number of things that are, like, I just don't agree with the backstory of Datas. He was sent to Earth from Gosei World just in case contact with the Heavens Tower was lost, which happened 4 episodes earlier than his actual debut. So I'm not quite certain what the writers were thinking. Anyways, he's basically the young, ambitious, but powerless assistant. He's young and confident, but he lacks power. He's that kind of character. He's also, and anybody watching this video, you know this character without even like knowing anything about this character. It's the kind of character in anime, tokusatsu, and mangas who says desu all over the place. At the end of every sentence, something, something, something desu. He's that character, okay? In Tensou Sentai Goseiger, Datas is that character. He's the one who says desu all over the place. And he overreacts and... yeah. So I guess I don't need to say much more than that. It took me 20 minutes to do this intro. Oh. I'm not entirely certain what advantage there is, tactically speaking, if you disguise yourself as a video arcade machine cabinet. I'm not entirely certain. There's the symbol for the Goseiger right there, with the 3 tribes lined up in the shape of Master Head's head, I'd like to point out. The buttons are painted on and non-functional, but you can turn this. That is not a button. You cannot push on that. However, there is an on-off switch right here, which I will get to in a moment. I mean, for the most part, it looks like a video arcade machine cabinet. It really does. Even to the point of, there's a bunch of stuff on the sides and the back that you're never ever going to see when you're in the arcade, because it's always up against the wall, so you're not going to notice those things. So, like, having a bunch of kibble and stuff on the back, not a problem in this particular case. Not that Super Sentai really has issues with kibble. And then the speaker is located on this side here. Because he is part of the Tensou Sentai Goseiger toy line, Datas comes with not 1, but 2 Gosei cards. And both of them have a function that are exclusive to Datas here. The first one is the Hyper Bullet, or is it the Bullet Header. And then Hyper Gosei Great. But they, like all other Gosei cards, they are also double-sided. And so the first one is, and you're meant to store both of them simultaneously. You just slip it in the side, just like that. Unfortunately, you cannot push the cards in all the way from this side here. You have to actually stick your filthy mitts in here and smudge up the image, and meh, there. Now it looks like a proper video arcade card machine thing. Is it Battle Dice-O or Dice Battle-O? I don't remember anymore. It's been long enough, I don't remember anymore. Anyways, yeah, you're usually greeted with that at the real video arcade machine. Real video arcade machine? More on that later. However, unlike the electronic tensoder, the DX Datus Hyperset is not capable of reading the Gosei cards. This is strictly storage we're talking about here, not actual reading, not actual function. It knows when there's a card in there, but it doesn't know which card is in there. So, yeah. And as I just showed you a moment ago, this is kind of the default when you're not paying attention to anything. Of course, this is just blank plastic here. This is nothing right here. There's a little, in case you're wondering what those clips are just to hold the cards in place. It's oh so slight spring right there. See right there? It's a little spring right there that holds the cards in place. So they're not really going to go anywhere. But anyways, what you can do, not only are they double-sided like in this fashion, but you can also flip them over like this. And here we have the actual persona of Datus shining through. Now, because there are two cards, one of the cards has this basic face, or basic expression. There's the Goseiger themselves, but then he also has a worried expression, and angry, determined, whatever you like. But to keep things simple for the time being, I think I'll just keep him like this. I really wish you could push those cards in all the way. Save the complaints for later, Ava. Come on. You could push those cards in, not ruin it. Okay, so we've taken care of the card thing. Now let's take care of the electronic thing. In an unusual switch, you actually push the switch down. I'll say this right now just because it's been... I looked. Believe me, ladies and gentlemen, I looked. I cannot find translations of the things that this toy says. Now, I can guess as to what a couple of them say, but just because I can't speak or read Japanese, I have no idea what some of these lines are. They may be actual quotes and actual lines from the show. That's entirely possible. It's certainly better than what Takara Tomy and Hasbro have been doing for the last 20 years. But please understand, I did try to make an effort to find out what the translations are. If you know what they are, please tell me. Please write them down in the comments, and I'll highlight them. I'll put them in, like, author's comments or something like that. I really, really appreciate any help I can get. It's so frustrating. I can't find the translations. This is ridiculous. Okay, here we go. And by the way, this has been on for about 30 seconds already, and I'd like to point out he hasn't made a single sound except for when I turned it on. And I already pointed out the speaker right there. Despite being an electronic toy, A, the sound effects play randomly, and B, there's no lights involved. Even though this is a transparent piece of plastic right here, that's not a light for some strange reason. It just is. So, whatever, yeah. So, the only electronics you're going to get is sound effects. And again, they play randomly. Didn't I just say that already? Let's go. It's actually pretty darn loud. I'm standing, I'm at arm's length away from this thing, and it's pretty loud for me. Can't imagine how loud it is for you guys up there. You cannot interrupt them, no matter how many times you turn this. They are not keyed to... There is no difference between if you turn it clockwise or counterclockwise. It'll always play them randomly. It doesn't matter. The other thing, you can't interrupt them by constantly turning it, like this. It just immediately jumps to the next one because it notices, oh yeah, I'm turning, so be aware, that's it. Yeah, he says those things. I have no idea what he's saying. Most of those, I don't know what he's saying. And the only time it speaks is when you turn the thing. Otherwise, you can leave it on for hours, however long the batteries last. The 2 AAA batteries, by the way, which you have to install. He won't make any noise until you actually turn this thing. So it's very possible for you to wear out the battery. So make certain you turn that off when you're done. Okay, let's get some important stuff done here, shall we? The instructions are a little non-specific. For this particular mode, they're non-specific as to whether you leave these attached or remove them. For my own sanity, I'm going to remove them because I think they look a little better. And then you're going to spread them oh so slightly like that, and that's it. And you're going to flip the arms around, snap, snap, and there you have Datus in his walking around the house mode. Or, I'm sorry, walking around the astronomy lab mode, I guess. The arms ratchet every 45 degrees all the way around. And the legs can spread a little bit more. Due to transformation, you can actually get him to spread his legs quite wide. That's the limit of what they could do. But for... Careful, watch your fingers. You know, for this basic form, you want to get his legs down to just that first tiny little ratchet, and that's it. He is a cute, adorable little figure. By the time episode 11 rolls around, Datus has become a bit of a worrywart. He worries that the Goseiger are going to get themselves hurt, and there won't be anything he can do about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's able to contact Master Header up in Gosei World whenever he has something really significant or some key piece of evidence that need to be passed on to the Goseiger. And he's also a remote sensor unit so that the Goseiger can know whenever there's a war star or a Yumaju floating around all over the place. I mean, he does a couple of things. I also hear he makes for a really good housemaid. I mean, I don't know, it looks like a doorman to me. He's a doorman or he's some sort of manservant. I haven't quite decided what he's supposed to look like. There may be some cultural reference here, but I'm not entirely certain. Anyways, yeah, he just wants to do some more. Well, he finally gets his chance in episode 11 when he gets himself a bit of an upgrade. A hyper upgrade in the form of the bullet header. Or is this the hyper header? Hyper header? Hyper bullet hanger? I'm not entirely certain. It's got wheels and it... is it supposed to be a missile or a... I don't know, like, is that supposed to be a mouth? I'm not entirely certain. Those are definitely eyes, and there's some sort of crest right here in this, and... honestly, I don't know, like bullet header, hyper header, or something like that. So yeah. Anyways, he gets the use of this. Of course, because this is the hyper bullet header or bullet header or hyper header, I don't care at this point. I really don't. Because it has one of these on the back of it, means you can attach it to any roleplay toy that'll accept a header. In this case, the Gosei Blaster. Oh! It's not that I don't have it turned on. You can see I very much have it turned on, but it doesn't have an association with it. It doesn't have one of those crucial little pegs that sits up there. It doesn't have one of those. So when you attach it, it won't be uniquely identified by any particular tribe. As a result of this, it has no unique sound effect to go along with it either. It's just the default sound effect. You don't even get a disconnect or connecting sound. That's it. Actually, to be quite honest, I don't remember if the hyper bullet header actually gets used on a Gosei Blaster or anything else like that, just because the only time you usually see it is when it's used with Datus, but that's kind of it. So I don't think they even did attach it to the Gosei Blaster or anything else like that. So that's it for the hyper header by itself. So, to kick things off, we're going to fold down these blue panels, just like that. And these don't stick together anyway. They just, they're usually stored together like that. So that's all you got to do with these. And we're going to attach them with the blue on the inner side of the leg. Like that. Going to split the hyper bullet header, hyper header in half to reveal a lot of extra gun barrels. What the crap, man? Where were those a moment ago? Let's see if this makes any difference. Nope, still doesn't make any difference. But oh man, was that a 5-barrel beam gun? Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's awesome. And we're going to attach the hyper bullet header to Datus. And there you have Datus Hyper. Well, it's a little difficult to say. I mentioned it earlier, when it's just Datus by himself, Datus by himself, you open up just at one time, but because he's so much larger and it's a little more action figure-ish at this point, it wouldn't be such a bad idea. Careful, watch your fingers. To have it ratchet to that second position. I know, you can do it either way. There isn't really anything in the instructions that says you can't do it this way. Now that is a hyper upgrade. Oh, chest design's kind of neat. It's kind of the Goseiger logo, a little bit. Yes, you can still very much see his eyes under there, but you're not really supposed to notice that or pay attention to that. And in order to be a hyper persona, you have to have boxing gloves for some reason. He has boxing gloves, and he's a completely unskilled fighter, but gosh darn it, he's doing the best that he can. So he's got officially licensed Goseiger boxing gloves that he has in this mode. So yay, whatever. Those you've seen already, but these are just extensions. Boxing boots, I suppose. I'm not entirely certain. Here's the battery compartment, by the way, which I forgot to point out earlier. Articulation is exactly the same, every 45 degrees all the way around. It's also exactly the same because there's no head articulation side to side whatsoever. So you can flip these around if you want to, but his hands are a little bit small, and he kind of loses. Honestly, he loses something when you do it that way. And again, you can pose the legs. You have a couple of options in posing. You can even make them fold straight down if you like to. So that's it for Datus Hyper by himself. Or at least that's what I would have said if I'd completely forgotten that he has a completely different set of sound effects in Datus Hyper mode. Me. So anyways, it's kind of a weird scenario here. There's a hole provided for the sound effects, but it's completely covered up by the arm joint. You can fold this up as part of the transformation, and there's the sound effects hole, or the speaker hole, whatever. But in this case, for my own sanity, I think I'm going to just fold this back, and you guys will be able to hear it that way. Yeah? Yeah. In addition to getting a new head and some new armor and, well, some significant height extension, he has a complete persona change as well. That's his main attack, see? No idea what that's supposed to be. Datus Dynamic Crash is his finishing attack, by the way. Ironically, he uses a lot more English when he's Datus Hyper, so ironically I actually understand better what he's saying in this form than I do in the other mode. It's weird, but apparently when you upgrade your armor and your weapons and all that stuff, you apparently learn how to speak English. Yes, that's just how that works. Okay, now I'm done reviewing all the features of the DX Datus Hyper. How obvious is it that I'm filming this 2 days later? I've gone on a bit of a roller coaster when it comes to my opinion of the DX Datus Hyper set. And if I could sum it up in one sentence, it's that the character, not just the appearance of it, but the character doesn't belong on the battlefield in a Super Sentai setting. You've got a video arcade machine that transforms into a cute little robot that transforms into a slightly less cute robot, which combines with another giant robot to form a super robot. That's a heck of a thing. Now, I don't really have anything wrong with with the toy, like physically the toy, I don't have any big issue with it. There's some programming that I disagree with. They could have done that slightly differently, but for the most part, physically the toy, I don't have any big issue with it. Even the card sliding thing, that's actually nice that you can store both cards in there at the same time, and they don't take up, like a massive amount of space to create like an extra little slot, something or other, where you hide the extra cards back here, and you could only put one card up here at a time. So I'm glad that they limited it to 2 cards, which is restricting in some ways, but on the other hand, it's a relief because you only have 2 cards you have to worry about, and it just keeps the expression simple. So physically, the toy, I don't have any big issue with it. And yes, absolutely. It looks like a video arcade machine. They actually did a pretty good job in that transition phase. If you look at the real Dice Battle O video arcade machine, it looks pretty much just like this. So, except for, when you turn it to the side, then in that case it looks different and very much doesn't look like that from the back. But, small beans, that's how DX transforming toys work. You gotta put your kibble somewhere. So the cabinet arcade machine that you see here is not, I don't have any big beef with it. It looks like a video arcade machine, and hey, I used to play them, so why not? Now there may be some slight styling choices that were made that's like the difference between an American arcade machine and a Japanese arcade machine. I don't know much about it, so don't hold me to that. But it seems like there's slight differences in the way it works, and also, this is a toy, so they could only do so much with it. But for the most part, I don't have any problem with this mode, and I don't really have anything wrong with the toy as it physically is, and everything that it's capable of doing too. So I don't physically, it's Bandai of Japan quality, and it works just fine. So I have no real issue there. It's kind of more about the persona that they're trying to convey through the toy, and in particular the toy line that this particular toy is being attached to. What do we have? We have animal heads attaching themselves to vehicles, and then those animal vehicle hybrids combine into a giant robot, a giant fighting robot. And then you've got other heads that are attaching themselves. And so when you bring Datus into the fold as a character, he doesn't really belong. Whether it's an arcade machine that transforms into a robot or not, it doesn't really fit what Tensou Sentai Goseiger's mecha lineup is aiming for. So it's an awkward transition, and at the time I first saw this in 2010, I was like, there's no way I can take this seriously. Look at these eyes. Look at them. Look at them! The eyes there has never been anything like that, as expressive and, dare I say, emotional as those eyes appear to be. This is the static expression or whatever it is. Whatever. In 2008, when Engine Sentai Goseiger was on the air, and we first saw the designs for the DX engines, we were all scratching our heads like animal heads that are molded in as part of vehicles that have animal aspects to them, but they're still very much vehicles. At the time, in 2008, well, late 2007 when it was first announced, we Super Sentai and Power Ranger fans, we just kind of laughed it off. It's like, okay, this is weird, but we're going to give it a chance and see what happens. As I recall, in 2007, when I first saw the Engine O and Burka and Gunfer and all those others, I didn't really raise my fist in anger and say, Bandai Plexator betraying what Super Sentai is meant to do. There was hesitation, there was cautious hesitation, but I didn't really, outright hate what was happening. But to be fair, at the time, we also thought, well, it's a one-time thing. They're never going to, animal heads attached to real-world vehicles and fictional vehicles, that's never going to happen ever again. So we'll just take it in stride. We'll let them do it this one year, and then we won't have to think about it ever again. And so if you look at the toy line for the rest of Tensou Sentai Goseiger, the role-play weapons, the characters as they're portrayed on screen by the actors, the mecha that appear and how they combine with each other, or in some cases how they don't combine with each other, you then throw in this arcade machine with this childlike persona. And regardless of the value that he has to the team, it's still very jarring. There have been, oh my God, folks, how many of these childlike characters, childlike assistants to the mentor have we had across Super Sentai? We've had a flying acorn, for crying out loud. I don't think you can get much more childish than that. But on the other hand, there have also been some assistants to the mentor who have found their way onto the battlefield. I can't remember what year it came out, and I think Flashman was the first one to do this. But they had their robotic assistant to the mentor character. The robotic assistant transformed into the big bazooka that the Rangers would then use to finish off the monsters. And there was, as a result, there was a DX-sized toy. It didn't interact with the mecha. But you know, you could hold it. You could hold it in your hand and fire the thing off. Because I don't think the Flashmen. Yeah, in fact, I know the Flashmen didn't have. They didn't have individual weapons that year. It's a little complicated from that show's perspective. Whatever. So this was kind of the interest of the role-play toy for a weapon for Flashman. If it was Flashman, I could be totally wrong. It might have been Five-Man. I could be wrong. I haven't seen the other one, so. So we have seen those kinds of characters happen before, and in that regard, Dadis is not too different. So I'm not going to fight that one too much, but I think it's more a matter of how passive Dadis is. He's an arcade machine, and he has no weapons on him whatsoever. He's got nothing to his credit, and even in the show, he's not a fighter. He never was. But I mean, you look at this and. Aside from the fact that this is a triple changer, actually no, it's a quad changer, my bad. Aside from the fact that this is a quad changer, does this really look like something you would take serious on the Super Sentai battlefield, mind you? I mean, Monster of the Week, you can get away with something like this, but the hero mecha, not so much, no. So he's underwhelming. I can't take him seriously. However, it took a reanalysis some years after Tensou Sentai Goseiger had ended. It took a reanalysis for me to reconsider and actually get a fresh perspective on it. And it occurred to me that maybe I was being biased against Dadis. And here's why. If you had told me in the 1980s or even in the early 1990s, before the home entertainment video game systems, also known as console wars, before that all happened, if you had told me, like just as the Nintendo Entertainment System was coming out, just as the Sega Genesis was coming out, if you had told me around that time period, when video arcades were still prominent, by the way, when they were still normal and it was average, ordinary, and no one gave a second thought to the extinction of the arcade machine, let alone the video arcade where kids would actually... Anyways, if you had told me in the 1980s or the early 1990s, if you had told me that there was going to be a television show about these kids who hang out in a video arcade and they make friends with the video arcade machines who just so happen to transform into fighting robots, I would imagine that in that era of techno-electronic music that was still being influenced by disco from the 1970s and the neon lighting that was currently illuminating the dance floors of the 1980s and it eventually matured throughout the 1990s. If you had told me that there were video arcade machines, and this would be a television show or a movie aimed at kids, mind you, if you had told me there was a program of some kind where video arcade machines transform into fighting robots, man, that would have been awesome. And I would be dying. I would die to go to our video arcade and play that video arcade machine. It wouldn't even matter like what the content on the screen was. I would kill to play that video arcade machine. That would have been a hell of a good branding strategy. It's kind of a shame that you can't even do that today. I mean, PlayStation tried to do it with Transformers a number of years ago, and honestly, no one gave it much thought, so it didn't work. And the less said about that, the better. But a video arcade machine, now the kids are hanging out with, it transforms, that's alive. It's a robot in disguise. You know, if you'd said that to me in the 1980s or the 1990s, I would have been so stoked. That would have been amazing. In 2010, when Data's Hyper came out, it doesn't have the same punch, because at this point in 2010, the video arcade machine cabinets are a dying breed. That's not to say that video arcades don't still exist, but they don't really make any new ones, and if they do, they're few and far between. The video arcade is a dying breed. I mean, let's face it, the home entertainment video game community's taken it over. Me personally, I prefer PC gaming to console wars, but that's another discussion for another time. So when I think of Data's Hyper in that regard, it occurs to me that he's kind of removed from his time period. He came too late. And the charm of video arcade machines is kind of lost at this point, and it doesn't have the same punch. And that, by the way, is on top of, you know, the cute expression and the cute character that's then going to turn around and go up and grow to full size and fight up against giant monsters. So you put those two things together, and Datus becomes a really, really awkward, not just character, but also toy. You know, a video arcade machine that transforms. So he's out of time. He showed up too late for this to have a really meaningful impact on me. It would have been really great 20, 25 years ago, but not in the 2010s. I'm not saying that Bandai, Plex, and Toei missed the opportunity back in the day. I'm just saying it's too little too late. And again, you know, I have no real big issue with the mechanics, the mechanisms that are going on here. At least not with the toy. It's just, it's the thing. I'm just saying, you know, video arcade machine transforming into a giant robot, transforming into something that fights digital monsters or something like that. Like, that would have been neat in the 1980s and 90s, but it's kind of too little too late kind of thing. And he's got boxing gloves. I suppose that's okay, whatever. But I mean, at this point, you're kind of expected to ignore the fact that he's a walking, talking video arcade machine, and they kind of get away with it. I think kind of the only thing I disagree with here is the fact that Hyper Gosei Great's faceplate is right there and upside down. So, you know, aren't you supposed to, isn't Super Sentai supposed to, like, kind of keep something like that hidden on the back? You know, whatever. Part swapping feet, whatever. They might have been able to do some kind of a lever system in there. So, like, as a toy, I'm not terribly offended by it. It's more the presence, the persona that's being presented, and, you know, what it transforms into in its passive state that I have the bigger problem with. So at the end of the day, I'm not really going to call myself a huge fan of Data's Hyper, but he doesn't really float my boat all that much. Although you know, I must admit the head design is not bad, and I love that it hides the fact that it has not one big cannon barrel, but actually has 5 cannon barrels hidden in there. You attach that thing to a Gosei blaster. That's great. I love that. That's the kind of stuff I wish they'd done in Shinkager. Oh wait, they did. But anyways, yeah, I'll say that it took time for me to kind of get over my initial rage of Tensou Sentai Goseiger before I could finally take a second look and say, okay, not bad. Not bad. Not awesome, but not bad. And of course, because it is a toy and it is aimed at 4 to 6-year-olds, yes, ladies and gentlemen, it actually is a good toy. It's nice and solid. All you have to worry about is not pinching your fingers in here every time you transform it. And that's fine. I've got no problem with that. So just like physically as a toy, there's no bad engineering, quality control, bad paint applications, or good ones, decals that are peeling. Actually, there are no decals on this thing. The typical engineering and quality control stuff, it's fine. Again, it's more the persona and the presentation that's lacking a bit here. Oh, finally the sun came out, like genuinely came out. It's been almost 2 weeks now. Well, I mean, orange sunrises and daytimes and sunsets are all well and good, but when it comes at the cost of being able to breathe properly due to a massive ash cloud from British Columbia, Canada, hanging over your state, this is actually a nice thing to have the sun like that. Okay, anyways, moving on. So in the episode immediately following the debut of Datus Hyper, the Warstar faction decides it is time to make its final move and do their ultimate greatest attack against the Earth. Because, the previous 10 monsters just weren't cutting it. It wasn't good enough. So they decided to make their ultimate push, and they send down their top commander, and there's this big fight, and some stuff and some things happen. And then it turns out he's equally unstoppable when it comes to just Gosei Great and the newly revealed Datus Hyper showing up. And then the Goseiger start listening to the sounds of the Earth. It's something along those lines. It turns out to be it's the sound of all the headers talking to them all at the same time. And keep in mind, all the headers are animals. Hence, they hear sounds from the Earth calling to them. And they get a brand new Gosei card, which will allow them to combine both Gosei Great, Datus Hyper, and all of the headers that they have acquired up to this point in order to form Hyper Gosei Great. Now, as you all know, I'm not a big fan of the transformation process that Gosei Great is involved in. That is to say, there is no transformation process, let's be honest. So anyways, we're just going to start off by removing all 5 headers. Third take. Come on, seriously? Dragon header. And we are not, for the second time now, unless you count the Exotic Brothers, the combination with the Exotic Brothers, we are not going to move the head around, but we are, just like with the Exotic Brothers, going to move the wings forward. Oh, and we're also going to remove the Dragon Sword. So that's what we're going to start out with. So for Datus Hyper, we're going to remove the mask, close up the bullet head, the Hyper bullet header, close up the shoulders, and we're going to raise up the shoulder joint. Now, it's not really a shoulder joint per se, because, well, that's the actual shoulder joint. So the reason I didn't bring it up earlier is because, yeah, you can tilt it up like that, but you don't really gain anything by doing that. So unless you're like 4 or 5 years old and don't give a crap, yeah, don't bother. It's not worth it. Like that. Let's go ahead and flip it over. Let's go ahead and, careful, watch your fingers. Spread the legs all the way this time. And remove those bits. Go ahead, take both feet and extend them outwards like that. And then keeping the blue side to the outside, we're going to attach these like this, using a different set of connection points than we did previously, because we're attaching the underside of the foot rather than the back of the leg like we did when we had it in its cabinet or arcade machine cabinet mode. Blech. We're going to turn it like this, attach it like that, and I believe that's it for Datus Hyper. So now we're going to combine Datus Hyper and Gosei Great like that. Okay, now there's 15 headers we have to deal with here, so pay attention because I'm only going to do this once. We're going to take the Landic Brothers, attach them here, and just for my own sanity, attach it to these at the left arm. Yes, it is. We're going to next take the Saw Shark header, attach it there, shrink down the Hammer header, and stick it here. No, it's not supposed to pop off. Tilt that camera up a little bit more. There we go. Now we can see what's going on. Take the Manta Ray header. Ah, so there is a reason why those wings fold up like that. Attach it to the left leg. I'm sorry, that's the right leg. Take the Terra header, stick it up here. Make sure you open up the mouth. crow header on the opposite side, open up the mouth, take the taka header and attach it here on the left knee, and then take the hyper bullet header, stick it over the left shoulder, and then let's go ahead and start attaching the 5 main headers. Girls on the outside, and Gosei Snake goes to the opposite shoulder. Wow. I guess this counts as chest armor, I'm not sure. And, you know, I take it back. You can actually just leave the dragon attached. Because, I mean, it's not like Red Ranger ever has his emblem, icon, whatever it is, removed from the center torso anyways, or whatever. And then finally we'll take the chest armor from Data's Hyper, flip it upside down, and peg it into the top of the head. Come on, get in there. I've only attached this thing twice, ever. Right? There it is. And that airplane decided to fly over at just the right time. And to answer your question, no, you do not use the dragon sword at any point in here. So this is just going to be sitting off to the side. And there you have, ladies and gentlemen, Hyper Gosei Great. Now, I'm not going to say that the toy of Hyper Gosei Great, at least the DX version, is unstable. It's not really. It's attached at 3 points, the header point behind the dragon, and then there's 2 points behind the thighs. So it is stable in that regard, but that being said, I would not advise, they're just kind of pegged in there, so I would not advise hanging on to just Data's Hyper or just Gosei Great on the inner side. It's not really meant to do that. You're not meant to hang on to one arm or something like that. So unfortunately, my essential tremor is going to make this thing shake a lot more than I usually do when I do these wraparounds. And there's a lot of heads that I have to go through. There's 13 dots on the head there, which corresponds with the correction 13 headers that are on this thing. Well, I suppose you had to put something on the knees, knee guards, something like that. I don't know. They could. I think they could have done it a little differently. And the feet are actually the only ones that are in the exact same configuration that they usually are when you make Landic Gosei Great. Saw Shark, the same thing for Seic Gosei Great. Oh, be careful. Oh, be very careful. Not a lot to see. See the back of Gosei Great's head right there. Ordinarily for, combined form like this, I can hang on to like one leg or hang on to the backpack because they're locked together really well, but these are just kind of, they just tab together and, oh, that was stupid of me, in too light of a fashion. I don't trust it. And believe it or not, this is not as front or back heavy as you would think it would be. As a matter of fact, if I were to remove Data's Hyper, whatever would be left over would still be stable all by itself, because the headers are not that heavy on the front, and Gosei Great doesn't have anything heavy on the back. So having the little, by the way, the boxing gloves as stabilizing feet, it is a little unhelpful, say yes. Oh, don't drop it. Please don't drop it. And that's it for the wraparound of Gosei Great. Unfortunately, because of the not quite as secure as I like to think it is stability of this thing, I'm going to have to set it down and empty my hands because I can't hold it and pose it at the same time. It's just heavy enough and it's just unwieldy enough I can't quite get away with that. Anyway, poseability is as follows. The left arm can move up 45 degrees, and that's it. You can open up the claw if you so desire, and it is opened up on the final thing. And then for the right arm, you can't move it at all. That's it. That's not even 45 degrees. Because, here's the really weird thing. I mentioned it in a previous video. You see these little Madmobile pods, these little underwater engines that I so loved on the Gosei Shark, that I enjoyed so much about it? Well, it turns out there's this tiny little itty-bitty insignificant engineering flaw that occurred where you see this Madmobile pod right here? You see the wing right here? Well, it bumps up against it. You can't get the arm up. So, officially, the only poseability across all of this thing is the left arm, which goes up 45 degrees. You can open up the claw, and that is it. Now, if you want to, and I'm not quite certain how I'm going to film this because I'm depth of perception. If you mess around with it oh so slightly, and again, keeping an eye on the Madmobile pod here. Let's see, I'm going to pull it. There we go. Folding this forward, you could, but then it ends up distorting the appearance, and even then, it still won't let you go above 45 degrees. You also can't tilt the wing upward, because eventually it's going to come into conflict with the headers over its chest. I guess this is chest armor? Yeah, I guess it would be. So, yes, you can tilt this forward, and you will get what you want. But if you're very careful, you can, let's see, did that, there it is. If you finagle with it just enough, you can get it to 45 degrees. It's kind of a combination of tilting this right shoulder armor, is that what this is? Tilting it slightly up and pulling it slightly forward. Just a little, and like I said, you're going to have to finagle with it, and it's an engineering flaw. It's not quality control, it's an engineering flaw. For all the computer-assisted drafting design that Bandai and Plex did for this thing, they appear to have missed a tiny, tiny little conflict. But of course, you don't have to worry about that with the left shoulder armor, chest armor, shoulder armor, whatever this is. There's plenty of space here, and it does go up to 45 degrees still. Ooh, let's see, open that up. And so that is it for Hyper Gosei Great. But wait, Ava, aren't you forgetting about the electronics? I mean, doesn't Datus Hyper have electronics in him? He does have electronics in him, but it doesn't change when you attach him to Gosei Great. In other words, there are no unique sound effects for Hyper Gosei Great. What you see is what you get. I don't even have the battery turned on right now because he doesn't have any sounds associated with Hyper Gosei Great. None of his call-outs, none of his, and there's no, like little hidden trigger in the connection points back here. There is no hidden anything in here, a hidden switch or a tab or, removing this or flipping these. No. There are no Hyper Gosei Great sounds anywhere in here. So what you see is what you get. Oh boy, what a mess I've gotten myself into. Do I have regrets getting this thing? Not really, no. There's still stuff about it I don't like. But I do wish to clarify, and this has nothing to do with me saving face on CollectionDX.com or even my YouTube review. I'm not necessarily going against what I said all those years ago when I said that this thing is kind of the downfall of Super Sentai as we know it. How little I knew at the time. But I'll keep it short and say it took years for me to come back and take a second look at the headers and at Gosei Great, and at Datus Hyper, and then at Hyper Gosei Great. It took time for that to go through. It took a cool-down period. Initially, when I got it, I was very disappointed with where Super Sentai was going, and to be quite honest, years later, I'm still disappointed with where it's going. And I had something of an epiphany. Not the greatest thing that ever happened, and it wasn't necessarily based on any, say, behind-the-scenes material or talking to other reviewers, other collectors. It wasn't necessarily that. This is something that I came up with on my own. In 2010, when I was initially reviewing the Tensou Sentai Goseiger toy line for CollectionDX.com, I could not get my head wrapped around the idea of what the hell headers are. The heads of animals. Transformers, Headmasters, Micromasters, Target Masters, all those, that's one thing. But, at least they transformed into little animals, so, I could appreciate that. These just kind of that, and that's kind of it. So, what on earth were they thinking when, and Terra Header is just the convenient one, I'm not poking at it in particular. What on earth were Bandai, Plex, and Toei thinking with headers? To this day, I still don't know what they were thinking. But in order for me to get to this point, I had to answer that question because I couldn't wrap my head around the I can't even say not stylistic choice, but the, dare I say, philosophical choice behind, not that there's much philosophy behind these things, although there can be, the design choice of going with the heads of animals. Now, this is a kid's toy, and it's designed for kids. And, I'm 35 years old at the time of this recording, almost 36. And what I couldn't figure out why the heads of animals. It took a leap of logic to say, you know what? Forget that they're animals. Forget it's the heads of animals. What are you ending up with here? Well, you're ending up with weapons. Small weapons, compact weapons. Saw sharks notwithstanding, compact weapons, those small weapons. Well, that's strange. Where have I seen that before? And this is all my thinking on the matter. Whether this is actually true or not, I don't know. But I think when it came to the headers and Tensou Sentai Goseiger, I think they were trying to recreate the Karakuri weapons from Hurricaneger in 2002, which also had animal-themed weapons. Sometimes it was the head of the critter, sometimes it was the entire animal, sometimes it was just part of an animal, but the point is it was an animal-themed weapon. If I had to guess, I would say that the headers were Bandai Plex Toei's second attempt at doing the successful Karakuri Ball line a second time. I think that is what they were trying to do here. Now, it was very befuddling. They went with the heads of animals. Don't get me wrong, that is very strange. And it still doesn't make sense to this day, but I think the reason they went with heads is because they didn't want to do the entire animal. Not that this is an animal, mind you, that's not an animal head, that's just a thing. It's not even a shark. But I think they were trying to do the Karakuri Ball weapons a second time, but they couldn't do Karakuri Balls again. Whether it was in like a little plastic gashapon container or whatever it is, that doesn't matter. The point is they were trying to do the weapons a second time. And a couple of them, most of them would have some sort of a mechanical feature to them. It wasn't just that the weapon exists, but that the weapon has some sort of feature built into that. That is what they were trying to aim for. They were saying, let's see if we can play around with these weapons, but not have to worry about compacting them down and doing, the kind of accordion thing that you did with every single Karakuri weapon. Because, they had to get the Karakuri weapons from, this big down to about this big. So that was an issue. With these, they got rid of the origami-esque, folding them together into a compact form. They got rid of that. And then they said, okay, let's just focus on deploying the weapons and getting some action features into those weapons. But then, because this is a toy line for children we're talking about, oh, I know, let's make heads of animals what we build these weapons around. I'm not saying I agree with it, but they could have gone a different route. It would have been just fine if they'd done just like, I mean, considering this is angels we're talking about. Don't forget, Tensou Sentai Goseiger is about angels, messengers from heaven. Whether there's a god, I mean, there's Masterhead, and let's less said about him, the better. But considering these are angels we're talking about here, were the heads of animals really the best choice they could have gone for? Why not just generic weapons? If you want to have your 5 Goseiger have animal mecha or animal themed mecha, okay, whatever, no big deal. But the weapons themselves, it's weird. It's really, really weird. So when I reached that point of realizing, oh, if I look at these as a second take on Karakuri weapons, then it clicked. Then I was like, okay, now I can appreciate it. Now I'm connected to something, because I enjoyed the Karakuri mecha from Hurricane. I really enjoyed those. I still have all of them, but now that's the big hurdle. Was why did the headers exist? Why did it exist as a gimmick? Once I cleared that hurdle, okay, now I can look at it with fresh eyes. Now I can look at it from a fresh perspective. Now I can make it work in my mind. Of course, this is all purely through extrapolation and just guessing. I mean, I know nothing about behind-the-scenes stuff, or didn't I already say that? Interviews with collectors and reviewers and stuff like that. Once I got to that point, it kind of cleared up the rest. Then I could take a second look at the toy line and say, okay, is it a good toy line or not? Arguably, yes. It's not a strong recommendation, but arguably, yes, it is. It works for me. I made it work for me. It took years to get to this point, but eventually, yeah, I did kind of crack under the strain. And I took a second look at it, and I didn't regret it. I mean, to be fair, I did the exact same kind of thing with the Power Animals from Gao Ranger, and I love the hell out of those things. So, you know, it's not like I haven't gone back on my word and taken a second look at things over time anyways. Could they have done this differently? Sure. They could have put the wings, had the wings be vertical or fold the wings back, and then, you know, you would have had a lot more room for shoulder articulation, I guess. I'm still a stickler for over-the-shoulder cannons. I'm not going to argue with that one. Big claw in one arm, a big sword in the other arm, that's fine with me. For Hyper Gosei Great in particular, it does commit a pretty big sin. It's not that it's a parts former, although I already pointed, did I point it, was it in this take or in the previous one? Or I pointed out it does have a little bit of parts forming. It's got the leg thing here, and then the mask. Those are the only things actually part swap. Aside from the actual headers, there isn't really any part swapping. But it does kind of do something that more than just Super Sentai Mecha have done over the years. You know me, I love a complex and involved transformation. This is why I'm an advocate for Bayformers, by the way. But Hyper Gosei Great did something else that I was not entirely thrilled with. And that is, Hyper Gosei Great does kind of have 2 robots standing back to back, and that's kind of it. Now, I do love me some Buster O-Ranger Robo, or Z Omega Battlezord, if you must. That's actually what this is. At the time that this came out, I didn't object. It was Power Rangers and it was Zords. It's still really, really awesome, really amazing, all that stuff. So I didn't really notice at the time that the Z Omegazord had a nice complex transformation, and then the Red Battlezord, you just kind of extend it, you put them butt to butt, and you flip some things over, you flip the arms over, and that's it. So there is some transformation involved, a little bit, and then extending the arms, and then putting a new helmet on it. So there is some of that. And also, I just want to reaffirm I still love over-the-shoulder cannons. So that's also something that I didn't want to miss out on. But it is pretty much a big chunk of robot going butt to butt with another robot. So much as I enjoy the Z Omega Battlezord or Buster O Ranger Robo if you must. That was one of several reasons why I was not thrilled with Hyper Gosei Great. That was definitely an issue. That was one of many issues that I had to deal with when I was both back in 2010 and then when I took a second look at it here. One of the other things that surprised me, and I didn't remember it or it didn't register when this originally came out, but I was really surprised to learn that Datus Hyper doesn't reflect. It's not a smart toy in that it doesn't know when it's being attached to Gosei Great. That really, really surprised me. In fact, in the previous take, I should have turned this on, but I didn't. I mean, and the only reason he's making that sound is because the Hyper Bullet header isn't attached right now. I could push up on the little tab here. That is ridiculously loud. So even if I'm holding that tab, listen. And so on and so forth. And, you know, and then the exact same thing here. Of course, he had to do all three of the alarm special effect ones when I hit them. But then again, they are random. Anyways, that was a missed opportunity. They knew how to get it to transition. They knew how to make it smart enough to know that it was transitioning between regular Datus and then Datus Hyper. So they were able to figure that out. But I wonder why it is they didn't have a tab, you know, in the header connection point. Not down here by the thighs, not that. But I don't know why it is they didn't have a little hidden tab up in here and give us. I mean, it's not like you can't access the trigger. There it is, right there. I can get to it so easily, and that's not an issue. You can even get to it when it's Datus Hyper as well. You know, so that's not a problem. Accessibility was not an issue. It's just, I guess, the engineering of trying to get two different switches. Like there's a switch down here by the Datus Hyper header connection point. There's a trigger down there, and then there would have to be a second one here. Maybe it was at its limits in that regard. So, yeah, but that is something that I do wish they had found some way. I mean, I would have willingly sacrificed 2 or 3 sound effects when he's Datus Hyper, whatever it is. In terms of why I got Datus Hyper, well, once I did the analysis, getting back to it, once I did the reanalysis of the individual headers, I got the Landic brothers, I got the Siak brothers. The Siak brothers, I'm still not happy with those. They're still ugly. I'm still not thrilled with those. And then I realized, oh yeah, I've got 3 sets of header brothers sitting there on the shelf all at the same time, and they're taking up a massive amount of space. So, not having any huge objection to Datus Hyper, at least not in terms of like engineering quality or whatever it is, I must admit, the main thing that made me get Datus Hyper is because it allowed me to store all the other headers in one spot at the same time. So believe it or not, I actually bought Datus Hyper as a space-saving measure, not necessarily as a cost-saving measure. So if I hadn't had the realization, yeah, these things are taking up a ton of space, I would not have Datus Hyper right now. So that's why I have Hyper Gosei Great. Things I would have done differently, yeah, I wouldn't have done the heads of animals. That's what I wouldn't have done differently. I would rather have the wings either staying up above the shoulders, or I would have had them folded back. Having all 5 facing forward like that, that's nice, but they could have had, maybe they could have like had the 2 females would have been like down here, or maybe had them up here. You know, have them on the knees, and then have the crow and the Terra header attached to the tops of the wings. So it would have been a hex over the shoulder cannons, which would have been 6 over the shoulder cannons. That would have been pretty darn impressive. So that's something I would have done differently. Did it need to transform any more than it already does? Well, like I said, I would like to have had Didus hyper transform a little bit more, but would it have been okay to have some headers attached to the sides and the back? I suppose. Oh, by the way, upside down giant transforming video arcade machine closet. Or cabinet, I'm sorry. Have I been saying closet this whole time? God, I hope not. Which is just bizarre. So that's another reason why I was not entirely thrilled with this thing, because you're taking a video arcade machine and attaching it to the back of a giant robot. Alright, I've already gone over that whole thing. I think I'm starting to repeat myself at this point. So yeah, time heals all wounds. Or at least some of them. And so with that, this is AV Unit Fue for CollectionDX.com, signing off.